Cool.
All right. Where are we going?
And where do you want to go?
I don't know.
I have friends.
Malta.
Fiji.
I want to go back to Malta.
We love Fiji. The Maldives.
I have friends who were in Madi. They went back for a vacation
Oh,
this week,
yeah.
and they were touring CAC, and they said something. They said, "Number one, poor Saeed isn't there anymore. Um,
Mm.
the house,
Not the house.
the family, all the members of the family passed away, and so the property was sold, and it's now a 3 or 4 giant, very expensive condominium apartment building kind of thing."
Oh,
He says, "Would you like?"
Oh,
He said, "Would you like a picture?"
No.
no.
Not interested.
No, thank you.
No.
Oh, bummer.
But
Is the
they're
mango tree still there? Was it a mango? Was it mango? Lime? Lemon? What was it?
it was a mango tree. There
Mango
was
tree.
a avocado tree. Yeah.
there's a
Uh,
grapefruit tree,
Yeah, there was a banana tree.
a great big old
no, it's probably not there.
yep. But
Uh,
no, I mean you understand it. It was a very nice piece of property and a very nice location and but so last week we talked about how going back several lessons, how Jesus said we need to abide. He said that the Holy Spirit is going to help you and remind you and cause you to remember. And then what we talked about a little bit last week was that after Jesus died and the resurrection, and then he left, the Peter and almost half the disciples were like, "Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm going fishing." And they left, went back up to Galilee to go fishing, as well as the two guys that went on the road over to Emmaus. And in both of those cases, Jesus shows up to them and says, "Yo, guys, no, 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 this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. Go back to Jerusalem and wait for what we know is Pentecost. The Holy Spirit's going to show up in Jerusalem. So you need to go back to Jerusalem and wait for the Holy Spirit." And because Jesus takes pains to go tell the guys, "Get back to Jerusalem, guys," uh, that it must be important. And so then we talked about how, as a book, the Bible, we don't have everything. John tells us in a couple of places, well, I didn't tell you about all the miracles he did because I haven't got enough room in this book. And he basically says later in the book, I haven't told you everything he said either. Because if I did, I'd be writing volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes. I think the phrase was something along the lines of, there aren't enough books in the world to contain everything he said or did. So we know what we have is a portion. We also know that as far as the church is concerned, the large capital C church, there are other writings of the early fathers, of other disciples, all sorts of things that even between the Catholics and the Protestants with the Apocrypha, we know that there are other things out there that we all consider to be true and honest writings and real, but they're not in our Bible. That is just that different groups decided different things went in the book at about 300 AD. I see a cat something. Um, but so we know we don't really have anything, and we know the whole Holy Spirit thing is important because he says he's going to come and he's going to remind you of all the things we said and did and teach you and tell you what's going on. So at that point, when I look at a couple of different things, one of the things that we see, if you go to like 1 Corinthians 1, you looking for which verse? I think it's 11. Yeah. So Paul's writing to these guys and says in 1:11, "For I've been informed concerning you, my brethren, by Chloe's people that there's quarrels among you. One of you is saying, I'm of Paul. One of you says, I'm of Apollos. One of you says, I'm of Peter or Cephas. One of them says, I'm of Christ." Which you say, well, that sounds odd. And you say, well, wait a minute. No, today, well, I go to this church because I like Pastor so-and-so, or I go to that church because I really like Pastor so-and-so, or I go to this church because this pastor preaches the way I like it, or the music ministry is good, or. So as people, we have a natural tendency to follow someone, if you will. And he's saying here, wait a minute, guys, no. Jesus is the center of this, not one or the other. And even to the point where this week, the Catholic Church has finally come out with a piece of paper and published it saying that Mary is not a co-redemptrix. She's Jesus' mother, and she's honorable, and she's all sorts of things. But Jesus is the only one who can save, and basically has said it in a very nice way of don't be fooled. Yes, we honor Mary, but she's not co-anything with Christ as far as redemption and salvation. So we as people get caught up with this. I like this pastor. I like this way he serves. Or I like the way that the church does things. Or I like this music. This church has really good music minister, or. And yet that's not really what we're supposed to be doing. You can go all the way down through 1 Corinthians in 3, where he starts in about verse 4, where again he says, well, one says I'm of Paul, another says I'm of Apollos. Aren't they just mere men? Paul is himself. We're just mere men. What is Apollos? What is Paul? Well, servants through whom you believed, even as the Lord gave opportunity each one. I planted, Apollos watered, but God caused the growth. So that neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything. It's God who causes the growth, and he's the one who causes it to work. So what we need to be careful of is it's fine to enjoy somebody's preaching. It's fine to follow someone. But we need to be careful not to get stuck in well, this person's got it. Because I don't know about you guys have ever run into it, but when we were early married, we were in a group of people during the Hagen Copeland heydays. And there was a pastor that we went to church to because he really could make the Bible come alive. He really preached the word. And you were sitting there as he's preaching, you were sitting there flipping back and forth through your book. Like he'd use 40 or 50 scriptures from the front of the book to the back of the book and tie them together in a way that not very many preachers I've ever been to can do. I mean, Ken Bailey's one, and of course he does it in Aramaic and Syriac and all of that kind of stuff. But this guy could do it. However, what happens is you started to sort of focus in on what he said must be absolutely correct because he's working so hard. And the answer is he wasn't. There were several of the things that he said that were just flat out. If you thought about it long enough, you'd have said, no, this isn't right. In our case, we got transferred to Cairo in the middle of all that, which sort of pulled us out of that and got us into some guy named Chappie something. I don't remember his last name.
Dude.
Yeah. And the balance that being in a church of 40 countries and 60 denominations and the variation and variety in the worship of God and the variation in how you've looked at and been trained to, because part of our thing with where we are and what we like or don't like is what time are we living in, what century, what culture are we sort of deep into? What's my personality? Am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? Do I love to go out and knock on doors and try to do something? My answer is no. I'm an introvert. That isn't something I like to do. Would I sit on a bench like Christy did this last week in quotes? Would I sit on a bench and if somebody sits down and God says, talk to him. Oh, yeah, I can do that. But I'm not going around and knock on people's door. My upbringing was brought up as Presbyterian, sort of semi-Methodist. So formal, but not liturgical. And so I'm very comfortable. So when we got married and we went to, right before Christy was born, we went to, what was it?
Friendly
Friendly Assembly,
evangelistic assembly.
Friendly Evangelistic Assembly of God. That was the name of the church. And they were friendly and they were evangelistic. They were AG. I mean, they were all of the above. Neat group of people, but very different from my growing up experiences, and my experiences in Cairo very much shaped my view on how church kind of should be. And so when you talk to somebody over here and you say, so why wouldn't we do X or why wouldn't we do Y or something? And they're like, well, we're Baptist. That's not the way we do it. I'm like,
And
right, Robin. I'm like, so, we church with 40 countries, 60 denominations. I'm Baptist, I'm Presbyterian, it doesn't work. I'm Christian. I love the Lord. Hey, great. Let's move on from there. But those things do influence what we do, and they do kind of influence our flavor on how we worship and how we relate to the Lord. And I think part of what we need to remember is that may not be universal. Exactly the way I like it or I'm used to it may not be universal worldwide. And the second thing is listening to the Holy Spirit is amazingly important.
Mhm.
If Christ took the time to go up to Galilee and get the guys out of the fishing boat, and he took the time to run up to it halfway to Emmaus, catch up with the guys on the road, and then say, go back to Jerusalem, it must have been important. It really must. So we sometimes downplay the Spirit's role because we have the book. And therefore we have everything we need. I don't know that that's true. I really don't, because I think if you downplay the fruits of the Spirit in your life and the Holy Spirit able to move in your life, I think we missed something. And I think Christ, like Christy this week, if you weren't on earlier, Mary Kay was telling Kasum, Christy had an appointment get changed and a plan to meet a friend for lunch at a specific restaurant get changed at the last minute. So she didn't go at the same time and she didn't go to the same restaurant. And when she walked in the restaurant, the guy that held the door to let her in, God said, you need to talk to him.
Mhm.
And Christy's like, okay. And so she asked the guy, would you like me to pray for you? And the guy's like, yes, I would. And Christy was like, well, I can pray later. Just tell me what to pray for and I can pray later. And he was like, no, I'd rather have you pray for me right now in the restaurant. And her friend about this time walks up, who's also a Christian. And Christy says, well, this is my new friend, Abel. We're going to sit down and pray together. Would you like to join us? But she's at the wrong time in the wrong place because she's supposed to meet Abel.
Mhm.
And I think some of us kind of miss those happenings because we're so planned or we're so cultured or we're so whatever that we don't actually hear the Holy Spirit trying to work and trying to get our attention. I think it's important. I don't think we have absolutely everything in here. I think the Spirit needs to be working in our lives. And I think we need to be careful not to be following just a group of humans that we like the way they preach, we like the way they do the music or whatever. Nothing wrong with going to a specific church, but I think we need to be careful.
And Abel is homeless,
Mm.
20 years old, 20-ish years old. ended up eating lunch with them because they invited him to join them for lunch. Christy gave him her email address and he came to church on
A
Sunday.
coat and a shirt.
Didn't have, it's starting to get cooler here at night. It's not cool during the daytime, but she's like, he's in a short sleeve shirt. She's like, do you have a coat? Do you have a hat? Do you have gloves? Oh, Christy says, my husband keeps one in the trunk just to hand out. So he walked away with a coat, hat, gloves, came to church on Sunday, supposedly was going to go to a worship service tonight at her church, and has now got, yeah, and the other person Christy was with is a member of AA, and apparently Abel is also in the AA program, and so she said, you can come with me to AA. Whatever becomes of Abel at this point, we don't know, but he encountered community, and she looked at him and said, you know what? You matter, and God sees you, and he hears you. And the entire time, Christy says, I'm arguing with the Holy Spirit. No, because she actually saw the parking lot first.
Tell her what Susie said to Christy.
So Susie looks at her and goes, well, at least you weren't Jonah and ended up in the belly of a whale. But Christy had seen this guy walking across the street first when she heard the Lord say, sort of, you got an appointment with this person. And she's like, no, Lord. And then he moves into the restaurant and then he holds the door open for her. And she's like, okay, Lord, I get it.
Bam.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I should have had a V8, But how many times do we miss the people that he's putting in front of us? And are we afraid to step out? And I mean, what's the worst thing somebody could say if you say, can I pray with you? They could say no. Okay, fine. That's right. Okay, whatever. I think one of the things we learned in Cairo was we met a whole lot of people that we probably didn't think were ever going to get to heaven because we were so narrow focused on you have to be whatever denomination you were. And all of a sudden you went, oh, you believe in Jesus too, and you believe that he's the Son of God. And, okay, fine. The things that we disagree on really don't matter all that much.
Doesn't matter.
We just won't talk about those.
Yeah.
And heaven became a whole lot broader and looks a whole lot more like I think heaven's going to look than what we thought before we ended up in Egypt.
I think the picture of the church family was broadened quite a bit for me being overseas.
You could probably stop recording.
Oh.